This is Chip Maxwell, and you're listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. Will schools in states with NIL income tax exemptions or no state income taxes have an advantage in landing football recruits over states that don't? Does the election of a new pope impact financial markets? And should I or should I not own my own life insurance policy? David Brooks has answers to these questions in today's Q&A episode. Into the Q&A we go. Well, David, we made the big announcement last week that we are sponsors of Husker Athletics now, Retire Smart. So this question about income taxes hits us in a whole new way now. Income taxes and perhaps Big Red recruiting. Here's the question. I saw that Arkansas exempted from income tax name, image, and likeness deals, NIL deals, for college athletes. Won't schools in states with such an exemption or with no state income tax have an advantage in trying to land blue-chip recruits who are getting 6- or 7-figure NIL deals? Meanwhile, the Tennessee quarterback who left because he wanted a bigger NIL deal was a college student who needed more education and personal finance. It looks like he ended up in much worse shape financially. Am I right about that?
Okay. There's more than one question there.
Here. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So basically, your taxed as income when you get these NIL deals, right? So as you, the recipient, this is income. You do have to claim it. You have to pay taxes on it. However, Arkansas literally singled this out, and so you won't pay state income. They'll still pay federal tax,
Sure.
but they won't pay state income tax there to give them basically at least a leg up. So that puts them on an equal playing field with about 10 states right now that don't charge income tax. And so, yeah, it mean the difference. And so I think you'll see legislatures in the states that have a lot of schools will start to make that play, because Florida has multiple powerhouse, right, college programs, and so does Tennessee, and they are already income tax-free states, so they do have an advantage. So, and to the point of Nico, the quarterback that was at Tennessee, I forget his last name, right? But
Nico Iamaleava.
Yes, Iamaleava. And his younger brother's another highly touted recruit.
Yeah, he's good too,
but he was earning, from what was reported, about $3.5 million, was trying to push that. His dad from 4 up to 4 to 4.2 is what he thought his value was. And he went to the people at Tennessee, and they said, sorry, that's not in the cards. We have other players. And so he decided to enter the transfer portal, and I think he thought maybe his value was a little higher, and he ended up signing, I believe it was UCLA out in California.
UCLA.
And he's got less than $1 million in guaranteed NIL. Now, he'll get some side deals that guarantee. So I think he's going to end up with about $2 million or something from what I've read. Mm-hmm. But he now will pay a 13.3% state income tax to the state of California on those deals. So he ended up walking away with a whole lot less money in reality. The grass is not always greener, and don't make long-term decisions with short-term data.
Well, people lament usually, boy, college football, it seems more like pro football, like the NFL. I'm thinking of LeBron James in the NBA. Am I mentioning this, or 10 or 15 years ago when he left Cleveland, he came up with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he ended up going to the Miami Heat. I think part of the calculation was going to Florida where there's no state income tax.
That was a huge deal.
He's going to get a huge contract, and he didn't want to get whacked by taxes.
And at the time, if you remember, it was Chris Bosh, I believe, and Dwayne Wade. So he was like the third superstar to join that team. Not saying it guaranteed him a title, but it put him in the. I think the odds makers put it over 37%. He would get a title within 3 years there, and they had a pretty good run. And sure enough, it was that was Miami buying some championships. But he did. He benefited financially, and once he had his championships cemented under his belt, what did he do? Didn't he go back to Cleveland for a while, and then he ended up going out to L.A. Right, right. And so now he's just taking the back end deals at LA Lakers and has his son there again. But these guys are going to make decisions, and the dollar amounts are huge. I'm watching daily to see if our friend Brock Purdy gets his deal done with the San Francisco 49ers. And we became Niners fans because my wife went to high school with Brock's dad, and so family friends, and so we kind of follow that. And he's about to sign somewhere in the neighborhood of $250 to $300 million long-term contract, with probably close to $200 million of that will be guaranteed. But he's in San Francisco. He's in California. However, again, this is where you have to do tax planning. He doesn't play all the games there. So when he plays Nashville, guess what? He earned that money in Tennessee.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
so it's not subject to California state
correct.
income tax?
If he's playing away games, you want to be playing in Miami, you want to be playing in Tampa Bay, right? You want to be playing in the cities that have the Seattle, no state income tax.
I want to write my contract so that I'll play the home games for free. Pay me for all the road games and get all your money from the road games.
Here's the problem in the NBA. We found this out. Players didn't realize when they went up Toronto Raptors, right? You're in Canada. You're paying a whole lot more tax there than you realized, right?
Oh.
Same thing in NHL players when they play their games in Canada. They have to pay Canadian taxes, which are, in the 50%. Anyway, so there's a lot to this stuff, and absolutely kids need to be educated on the taxation of these issues and stop just chasing the dollar, because I think NIL dollars are, if you play your whole career successfully in one college town, especially something like Nebraska, you can come back here, open restaurants here. You can get NIL deals, so to speak, for life, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and just to finish up on that point, usually we're worried about creating the right tax environment for business investment and so forth. Hey, state legislature, make sure you don't hamstring the recruiting for Husker athletics as well. All right. David, here's the question I referenced at the beginning of the show. So we got a question about the possible impact from the Vatican, the doings at the Vatican last week. Does the election of a new pope impact financial markets?
It actually does. Now, it just depends on some of the rhetoric that came out. Like the previous pope was pretty hardcore on the socialist side of things and made that very evident in his speeches. This gentleman has actually stood at a pulpit and talked about anti-socialism because it's bad. He knows that he's given speeches where capitalism, Pope Leo, capitalism actually benefits society and get more people raised out of poverty. Now, he does talk about, going almost back to the paraphrasing George Bush, the Jr., compassionate conservatism kind of way of doing it and what have you. But I'm just curious if the bigger impact is, are you going to have deep dish pizza when you go to Rome now versus thin crust?
Again, Chicago's on a roll lately. The name that he took, Leo, harkens back to Leo. He's Leo the 14th. Leo the 13th in the late 1800s wrote an encyclical called Rerum Novarum on new things. It was a pushback against socialism and communism, which were gaining ground in Europe. Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto, I think that was 1848, and it was gained momentum since then. And he made it very clear, no, it's a violation of natural law, these totalitarian doctrines that are being pushed. Private property rights and so forth, that is part of natural law. That is sacred, And so some people took that as a hint that, maybe this pope will navigate a little back toward the right when it comes to economic policy.
Well, that, and you take Italy's leader now, she is a pretty capitalistic person as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what we see out of Rome, et cetera. I think you are definitely going to see a shift, though.
All right. I love it, David, when we get a question that reflects close listenership. So the question is about life insurance, and here it is. Please settle a dispute I have with someone who listens to you regularly. He tried to tell me that you say a person should not own his or her life insurance policy. I wasn't having it. That doesn't make sense. Of course, I own a policy that covers my death, so the benefits go where I want them to go. What am I missing here? Well, David, I've heard you say it enough times that it is true. You do say generally you should not own your life insurance policy. Take us through that again.
Yeah, all right. So you need to understand life insurance, the death benefit will pay out to your beneficiary, whoever you've listed, spouse, children, or anyone else, tax-free. So I want to make sure you understand that. However, depending upon where you live and your asset level, the death benefit is calculated as part of your estate. So here in Nebraska, we're one of 6 states that still has an inheritance tax. Now, we do not currently put that inheritance tax on the death benefit, but there are states that do, okay? And federally, it is calculated as part of your estate tax. Now, as we sit and record this today, a person can exempt basically $14 million in assets when they pass without having to worry about the estate tax, but it's 40 cents on the dollar once we go past that. So family farmers, think about that. If you have a family farm, 640 acres today, and it's worth $8.5, $9 million, and you're around another 30 years, that's going to be worth $20 million when you pass. Under current law, the exemption drops to $5 million inflation adjusted next year in 2026. That's what the law says. Now, again, we'll see if it gets extended or not. But inflation adjusted, it's estimated to be just under $7 million by most economists. So if you could only exempt $7 million and your estate was worth $20 million, you're going to pay a 40% tax or even higher. It's up to 55% on the balance at $13 million. So that's $7 million in estate tax that's due 9 months to the day after you pass.
What can we do about this?
Well, so if you had $1 million life insurance policy, that $1 million death benefit is also calculated as part of that discussion, and you would give up half the death benefit, in other words, to the estate tax. So you can simply create a trust. It's very simple to do. It's called an ILIT.
Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust?
Yeah, ILIT, Irrevocable Life Insurance. Just changing the ownership of the policy to an irrevocable trust that is no longer now part of your estate. Therefore, when you pass, that death benefit still pays tax-free to your beneficiary, but it's not calculated part of your estate or inheritance taxes if you live in the wrong state. Again, it's a simple thing to do that can save you a lot of pain. Now, primarily, yes, I joke about it. You should never own it. But in reality, if somebody's out there buying their first term policy to pay off the mortgage, you're probably not having to worry about this. But the idea is when I say things, it's to do this, just that, get the listener's attention. Wait a minute, there's something I don't know here. And plan accordingly, because the legislative bodies can change these things. And if you put things in an irrevocable trust, they can't call it back, even through legislative changes. You are protected from this day forward. So it's an important topic.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. If you want to learn how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, visit retiresmartpodcast.com. And make sure to subscribe to keep up with new episodes every week.